Lone cadet, apex beast, step aside. The shuttle's engines screamed as it descended through station's atmosphere, its hull groaning under forces that would have crushed most species. Inside the cramped passenger compartment, Cadet gripped his restraints with white knuckles, watching through the viewport as the massive orbital academy grew larger with each passing second. Around him, alien cadets from across the galaxy shifted nervously in their seats. This crystalline form chimed softly in distress, while the multiple eyes blinked rapidly in what had learned was their version of anxiety. Even the usually stoic seemed tense, their chitinous exoskeletons clicking as they fidgeted. Was the only human aboard. First time seeing a real survivor, whispered a cadet named 447, its voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. I heard they can bench press small vehicles. That's nothing, added a with purple-tinted skin. My cousin works at the Galactic Council. He said humans once fought a war using primitive chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Can you imagine? No energy shields, no plasma weapons, just raw kinetics and sheer stubbornness. Pretended not to hear them, instead focusing on the data pad in his lap. The Galactic Military Academy's entrance requirements were brutal for any species, but humans had additional challenges. They had to prove they could function in low-gravity environments, adapt to alien atmospheric compositions, and somehow not accidentally injure their classmates during training exercises. The latter was proving to be the biggest concern. Attention passengers, the ship's AI announced in perfect galactic standard. We are now approaching station. Please prepare for docking procedures. Human passenger, please report to the medical bay for pre-arrival conditioning. Sighed and unbuckled his restraints. The medical bay was a small alcove near the rear of the shuttle, equipped with an atmospheric adjustment chamber and a gravity modification field. As he stepped inside, the familiar tingle of artificial gravity manipulation washed over him. Doctor, the ship's healing cast medic, looked up from her instruments. Her forearms moved in a complex pattern that recognized as professional concern. Cadet, she clicked, her translator converting the harsh consonants into something resembling speech. Your physiological readings are impressive. Heart rate at rest, 62 beats per minute. Bone density, 3 times galactic average. Muscle fiber composition shows 97% fast twitch development. Is that bad? Asked, though he already knew the answer. Bad, oh my young, it's terrifying. Doctor's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Your species evolved on a planet where everything was trying to kill you. Your gravity is 4 times galactic standard. Your atmospheric pressure would crush most civilized beings, and your survival instincts. She paused, consulting her readings. Let me put this in perspective. The average galactic citizen has a fight-or-flight response that triggers at threat level 7. Yours doesn't even register until threat level 23. Frowned, what does that mean for the Academy? It means, Doctor said, adjusting a series of dials on the gravity field generator, that you'll need to wear these at all times. She handed him a pair of metallic bands that looked like simple bracelets. Gravitational inhibitors. They'll simulate standard galactic gravity for your body, making you feel like you weigh 4 times your normal amount. It should help prevent incidents. Incidents. Last human cadet accidentally launched his roommate through 3 bulkheads during a friendly handshake. The poor being is still in reconstructive therapy. The gravity inhibitors clicked into place around his wrists, and immediately he felt his body become sluggish and heavy. It was like trying to move through thick mud while wearing lead boots. Perfect, Doctor observed, watching her instruments. Now you're only approximately twice as strong as the average cadet instead of 8 times, much safer for everyone involved. The shuttle shuddered as it connected with the station's docking clamps. Through the medical bay's small porthole, could see the vast expanse of station stretching out in all directions. The academy was built inside a massive asteroid, its surface dotted with training facilities, dormitories, and academic buildings. Somewhere in that maze of corridors and chambers, he would spend the next 4 years learning to become a galactic marine. If he survived that long. The passenger compartment had emptied by the time made his way back. His fellow cadets were already gathering their belongings and preparing to disembark. As he grabbed his duffel bag, the cadet from earlier approached him. Excuse me, 447 chimed nervously. I hope you don't mind me asking, but is it true that humans can go without sleep for weeks? Not weeks, replied, shouldering his bag. Maybe a week if we have to, why? The crystalline being's form flickered with what was learning to recognize as amazement. My species requires 16 hours of rest per day. A week without sleep would kill us within days. Different evolution, I guess, said with a shrug. As they filed off the shuttle, found himself the center of attention from the other new arrivals. Word had apparently spread that there was a human among them, and curious aliens kept finding excuses to walk past him, steal glances, or whisper to their companions. The docking bay was enormous, easily large enough to hold a dozen shuttles. The artificial gravity here was set to galactic standard, which made feel even heavier with his inhibitors active. Still, he noticed that his movements were more fluid and controlled than those around him. What felt like crushing weight to him was apparently normal for everyone else. "Welcome to station," announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "New cadets, please proceed to Processing Bay 7 for orientation and dormitory assignment. Mind the gravity wells in section C through F, and remember that this station operates on a strict no-violence policy. Any physical altercations will result in immediate expulsion." The crowd of new cadets began moving toward the indicated bay, a mix of species was only beginning to recognize. There were the familiar with their crystal bodies, the spider-like, and the purple-skinned. But there were others too. Towering hegemony soldiers with their metallic carapaces, tiny K-engineers who barely reached his knee, and what looked like living shadows that the translator identified as umbral-class entities. Processing Bay 7 turned out to be a massive chamber filled with administrative stations and waiting areas. Holographic signs in dozens of languages directed different species to their appropriate processing queues. Found the line marked High Gravity Adaptation Species and was surprised to discover he wasn't alone. Ahead of him stood a being that looked like it had been carved from granite. Nearly 3 meters tall and twice as broad as it had skin like stone and arms that could probably crush a vehicle. According to the nameplate floating above its head, this was Thane from the heavy world planet Bastion Prime. "Another high," the being rumbled, its voice like distant thunder. "Didn't expect to see any others here." "From Earth," said, extending his hand before remembering that might not be appropriate. Thane looked at the offered hand with curiosity, then carefully extended one massive finger. "Earth, yes, I've heard of your world. They say it's so violent that your predators hunt in organized packs." "Well, some of them do," admitted. "Fascinating. On Bastion, our predators are mostly geological. Rock slides, volcanic eruptions, seismic events. We evolved to survive the planet itself trying to kill us." Was about to respond when their queue began moving. The processing station was staffed by efficient-looking bureaucratic caste, their crystalline forms pulsing with soft blue light as they accessed the Academy's databases. When's turn came, the administrator's glow shifted to orange, which he'd learned indicated surprise or concern. "Cadet human designation," the being chimed. "Species classification extreme, gravity adaptation 4.7 standard, atmospheric pressure tolerance 12 standard, temperature range -40 to +60 Celsius, toxin resistance class 9. There was a moment of silence in the processing bay. Even the background hum of conversation died down as other cadets turned to stare. "Class 9 toxin resistance," whispered someone behind him. "That's higher than most suits." The administrator continued, its glow now shifting between orange and red. "Special accommodation requirements. Gravity inhibition mandatory, diet restrictions minimal, environmental suit required for most standard atmosphere settings. Dormitory assignment, solo quarters with reinforced construction." "Solo quarters?" asked. "I'm afraid so," the administrator chimed apologetically. "Previous attempts at housing species with standard gravity beings have resulted in complications. Your quarters will be located in Section D, Level 47. Doctor will be your assigned physician, and Commander will serve as your academic advisor." Accepted his student identification card and assignment materials, noting that several forms were printed on what looked like metal foil instead of the standard holographic displays everyone else received. "Grade materials," the administrator explained, noticing his confusion. "Standard tends to degrade when exposed to bioelectrical fields." As he left the processing station, caught fragments of conversation from the other cadets. "Did you see his muscle density readings?" My translator says his planet has atmospheric pressure that would crush most structures. I heard humans once survived an ice age using nothing but animal skins and fire. The orientation hall was another massive chamber, this one equipped with tiered seating that reminded of an ancient amphitheater. As cadets filed in, he noticed that the seating seemed to adjust automatically for different species' needs. His own seat was clearly reinforced and had additional gravity field generators built into the base. Commander turned out to be a veteran hegemony officer, his metallic carapace from countless battles. When he took the stage, his presence commanded immediate attention. "Cadets," he began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber, "welcome to the Galactic Military Academy. You represent 137 different species from across the galaxy. You come from worlds with different gravities, atmospheres, and evolutionary pressures. Over the next 4 years, you will learn to work together as a unified force." He paused, scanning the assembled crowd. Some of you evolved as hunters, others as prey. Some developed intelligence to survive hostile environments. Others relied on technology to overcome natural limitations. These differences will initially seem like barriers to cooperation. Commander's gaze briefly lingered on. But they are not barriers, they are strengths. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. We face threats from hostile alien races, environmental disasters, and cosmic phenomena that would destroy any single species. Only by combining our unique capabilities can we hope to protect our civilization. The orientation continued for several hours, covering academy rules, training schedules, and academic requirements. Learned that cadets would rotate through different specialization tracks: combat operations, engineering core, medical service, and command structure. Each track was designed to challenge cadets beyond their natural abilities. When the session finally ended, made his way to Section D, following the navigation indicators embedded in the corridor walls. The Academy's interior was a maze of passages carved directly from the asteroid's stone, reinforced with advanced materials and lined with life support systems. Level 47 was quieter than the main Academy levels. The corridors were wider and the walls looked significantly thicker. When found his assigned quarters, he understood why. The room was basically a bunker. The walls were made of some kind of composite armor, the floor was reinforced steel, and the furniture looked like it could survive direct weapon impacts. A holographic plaque by the door read, "DATHWORLD grade accommodation, authorized personnel only." Inside, the quarters were surprisingly comfortable. The bed was oversized and looked incredibly sturdy. The desk and chair were clearly built to handle significant stress. Even the bathroom fixtures appeared to be military grade. As unpacked his belongings, he discovered that his room had several features the others probably lacked. The walls were equipped with variable gravity controls, allowing him to adjust the field strength for exercise or comfort. The atmospheric controls could simulate dozens of different planetary environments. Most surprisingly, there was a small gymnasium attached to his quarters, complete with weights that looked like they belonged on a starship. A soft chime from the door announced his first visitor. Opened it to find Doctor, his assigned physician. She was a tall, elegant being with silver skin and luminous blue eyes, clearly from one of the more advanced, peaceful species. "Cadet," she said in perfect English, "I'm Doctor. I'll be monitoring your health and adaptation during your time here. May I come in?" "Of course," stepped aside, noting how she paused at the threshold to scan the room's interior with some kind of handheld device. "Impressive accommodations," she observed. "The Academy spared no expense ensuring your safety, and everyone else's, I suspect." Doctor moved to the center of the room and activated a holographic medical scanner. "I need to establish baseline readings for your physiology. The gravitational inhibitors are functioning properly, but I want to monitor how your body adapts to long-term use." As the scanner hummed around him, Doctor studied the readouts with evident fascination. "Remarkable. Your bone density is literally off our charts. Your cardiovascular system appears designed for extreme stress conditions, and your neural response times." She paused, double-checking her instruments. "Are you currently experiencing any stress or anxiety?" "Not really. Why?" "Because your adrenaline levels would indicate life-threatening danger to most species. But according to these readings, this is your normal state." Shrugged. "Earth's a pretty intense place. I guess we adapted." Doctor finished her scans and tucked away her equipment. I'll be checking on you regularly to ensure the gravity inhibitors aren't causing any adverse effects. In the meantime, I've programmed your quarters systems with appropriate atmospheric and temperature settings. If you experience any discomfort, please contact me immediately." After she left, stood at his room's single small window, looking out at the asteroid's surface. In the distance, he could see training facilities where cadets were already beginning their exercises. Tomorrow, he would join them. As he prepared for sleep, couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was expecting him to either fail spectacularly or accidentally destroy something important. The whispered conversations, the reinforced accommodations, the constant medical monitoring, it all pointed to one conclusion. They were afraid of him. Not afraid in the sense of malicious threat, but afraid of what a human might do without meaning to. Afraid that his evolved strength and reflexes might prove too much for their carefully controlled environment. Afraid that the very qualities that had allowed humanity to survive on Earth might make him incompatible with galactic civilization. Activated the gravity controls in his quarters, slowly adjusting the field to match Earth-normal conditions. Immediately, his body felt light and responsive again. The heavy sensation from the inhibitors remained, but at least now he could move naturally within his own room. As he drifted off to sleep, the lone human cadet at the Galactic Military Academy wondered if he would prove them right. Would he be able to adapt to their world, or would his nature ultimately make him too dangerous to serve alongside the galaxy's other species? Tomorrow's training exercises would begin to provide some answers. Outside his reinforced window, station continued its slow rotation around the distant sun. Somewhere in the vast academy complex, hundreds of other cadets were also preparing for their first day of training. Each brought their own unique abilities, evolved on worlds with their own challenges and dangers. But only one had evolved on a planet where everything, from the weather to the wildlife to the very ground itself, had spent millions of years trying to kill them. Only one carried the legacy of a world so hostile that simply surviving to adulthood was considered a remarkable achievement. Slept peacefully in his reinforced quarters, dreaming of home. In his dreams, he was running through Earth's forests, feeling the real weight of gravity, breathing unfiltered air, and facing dangers that would terrify most galactic species. In his dreams, he was free to be what evolution had made him, an apex predator from the galaxy's most dangerous world. Tomorrow, he would begin learning to be something else entirely, lone cadet, apex beast step aside. The Academy's wake-up alarm was a gentle chime that most species found pleasant and energizing. For who had grown up with Earth's harsh morning light and the sound of actual birds fighting for territory, it felt like a whispered suggestion rather than an alarm. He was already awake, had been for an hour, performing a modified exercise routine in his quarters' small gym. The gravity inhibitors made every movement feel sluggish and heavy, but had discovered something interesting during his pre-dawn workout. While the devices limited his physical strength to merely twice galactic average instead of 8 times, they didn't affect his reaction time, balance, or coordination. If anything, the constant weight seemed to be sharpening his reflexes. After a quick shower in what was essentially a reinforced steel booth, made his way to the Academy's main dining facility. The corridors were already bustling with cadets heading to morning meal, their various languages and communication methods creating a symphony of clicks, chimes, whistles, and standard speech. The dining hall was an engineering marvel, with sections designed for different atmospheric and dietary requirements. Followed the signs to Universal Nutrition Station 7, which apparently served food safe for carbon-based life forms with standard digestive systems. As he approached the food service area, conversations began to die down. Other cadets turned to watch as the human collected his meal. Had experienced this before during his brief training on Luna Station, but the intensity here was greater. These beings weren't just curious about humans in general, they were specifically wondering about him. The food itself was surprisingly good. The Academy's nutritional systems had analyzed his dietary requirements and provided something that tasted remarkably like chicken, along with vegetables that resembled Earth varieties, but contained exactly the right balance of nutrients for human physiology. Found an empty table in the general seating area and was halfway through his meal when he was approached by 3 cadets. The first was 447, the he'd met on the shuttle. The second was with the deep purple skin that indicated high social rank among their species. The third was something hadn't seen before, a humanoid with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. "Excuse me, Cadet," 447 chimed politely. "Would you mind if we joined you? We were hopping to ask some questions about your—" "Sure," said, gesturing to the empty chairs around his reinforced table. "I'm happy to answer what I can." The blue-skinned being leaned forward with obvious interest. "I'm Lyra from Prime. We're an oceanic world with very stable conditions. I've been reading about Earth in the Academy database, and I have to ask, is it really true that your weather systems can generate wind speeds over 300 kilometers per hour?" "Hurricanes, yeah," nodded, taking another bite of not quite chicken. "They're pretty dangerous. Most people evacuate when one's coming." The multiple eyes blinked rapidly. "Evacuate an entire region for weather?" "Well, the alternative is staying and potentially dying," said simply. There was a moment of silence at the table. Finally, 447 spoke up. The most extreme weather we experience is a light atmospheric disturbance that might vibrate our crystal matrices slightly. The idea of weather that could actually kill you is difficult to comprehend." "What about earthquakes?" Lyra asked. "The database mentions tectonic activity that can level entire cities." "Yeah, earthquakes can be pretty bad," agreed. "We build our structures to withstand them, but big ones can still cause a lot of damage. Japan's really good at earthquake-resistant construction." "Japan," they asked. "A region on Earth. They get earthquakes pretty regularly, so they've gotten really good at dealing with them. Buildings that can flex and move with the shaking, early warning systems, emergency procedures." The aliens exchanged glances that was beginning to recognize as amazement mixed with horror. "Your species builds structures specifically designed to survive the planet trying to destroy them," Lyra said slowly. That's actually incredible." Their conversation was interrupted by an announcement over the facility's communication system. "All first-year cadets report to Training Bay Alpha for basic fitness assessment and capability evaluation. Please bring your personal protective equipment and hydration supplies." As they gathered their belongings and headed toward the training bay, noticed that other cadets were giving him an even wider berth than before. Word of his Earth origins was clearly spreading, and with it, the growing reputation of humans as beings to be approached with extreme caution. Training Bay Alpha was an enormous facility with sections designed for different gravity requirements and atmospheric conditions. Most of the cadets were directed to the standard Galactic Environment section, but found himself assigned to High-Stress Environment Training Station 3. Commander was waiting for him there, along with Doctor and a new figure, a massive being that looked like it was constructed from living metal. According to its nameplate, this was Drill Instructor Prime Unit 7, a synthetic-class entity from the Forge Worlds. "Cadet," Commander greeted him, "today we begin your physical assessment. However, given your unique physiological characteristics, we'll need to conduct your evaluation separately from the other cadets." "Is that going to be a pattern?" asked. The synthetic being's optical sensors focused on him with mechanical precision. "Unknown variables require isolated testing protocols," it stated in a voice like grinding gears. "Standard evaluation parameters insufficient for species analysis." Doctor stepped forward with her ever-present medical scanner. "We need to establish your baseline capabilities while wearing the gravitational inhibitors. This will help us design appropriate training protocols that challenge you without endangering other cadets." Nodded and moved to the center of the training area. The space was equipped with a variety of fitness equipment, obstacle courses, and what looked like combat simulation systems. "First assessment, cardiovascular endurance," Drill Instructor Prime announced. "Standard protocol requires 15 minutes of elevated activity at 75% maximum heart rate." Began with what would have been a light jog on Earth. Within minutes, it became clear that the test parameters needed adjustment. "Cadet's heart rate remains at resting levels," Doctor reported, studying her instruments. "Respiratory rate unchanged, core temperature stable." "Increase exercise intensity," the drill instructor commanded. Shifted to a faster pace, then faster still. After 10 minutes of what would have been a dead sprint for most galactic species, his vital signs were barely elevated. "Remarkable," Doctor murmured. He's operating at approximately 10% of his cardiovascular capacity. Next assessment, strength evaluation, Prime announced, directing to a series of weight machines designed to measure lifting capacity across different muscle groups. This was where the gravity inhibitors became more apparent. Could feel the devices working to limit his strength, making the weights feel heavier than they should. Still, he easily maxed out every machine in the testing area. Equipment insufficient, Prime stated matter-of-factly. Recommend specialized hardware for evaluation protocols. Commander was making notes on a data pad, occasionally shaking his head in what hoped was approval rather than concern. What about reaction time and coordination? The next series of tests involved increasingly complex obstacle courses, reflex challenges, and hand-eye coordination assessments. Moved through them with fluid precision, his movements economical and controlled despite the gravitational resistance. Baseline established, Doctor announced after 2 hours of testing. Physical capabilities exceed standard parameters by significant margins across all categories. Gravitational inhibition systems functioning correctly, reducing potential safety risks to acceptable levels. Acceptable levels? Asked. You're still approximately twice as strong and 3 times as fast as the average cadet, she explained. But that's manageable. Without the inhibitors, you'd be in a completely different category. Commander approached as toweled-off sweat that was more from wearing the heavy restraints than from actual exertion. Impressive performance, cadet. Now comes the real test. Sir. Integration training. You'll be assigned to Squad Talon for tactical exercises. Your job will be to function as part of a team without overwhelming your or accidentally injuring anyone. Felt a knot form in his stomach. What if I can't control it well enough? The drill instructor Prime's optical sensors dimmed slightly, which was learning indicated thoughtful consideration in synthetic beings. Failure probability, moderate. However, integration protocols essential for academic progression. Alternative, isolation training with reduced graduation prospects. I'll do the integration training, said immediately. Commander nodded approvingly. Report to Tactical Training Base 7 in 1 hour. Squad Talon will be briefed on your capabilities and limitations. Remember, Cadet, they're not your enemies. They're your future comrades. Learn to work with them, not despite them. As the evaluation team dispersed, made his way back to his quarters to prepare for the next phase of his training. The corridors seemed even busier now, with cadets moving between various training activities. He passed a group of practicing what looked like synchronized meditation, a cluster of engaged in complex mathematical discussions, and several working on some kind of engineering project. None of them approached him directly, but could feel their attention as he passed. Word of the humans' evaluation results was clearly spreading through the Academy's informal communication networks. Back in his reinforced quarters, took a few minutes to adjust to the Earth-normal gravity settings. The relief of moving without the constant weight was incredible, but he knew it was temporary. If he was going to succeed at the Academy, he needed to learn to function effectively while wearing the restraints. He spent the remaining time reviewing tactical training protocols in the Academy database. Squad-based exercises focused on communication, coordination, and mutual support, rather than individual performance. The goal was to forge units that could function effectively in any environment, combining each species' natural advantages while compensating for their limitations. Was studying formation tactics when his door chimed. He opened it to find Thane, the massive being from Bastion Prime he'd met during processing. Thought you might want some company on the way to tactical training, Thane rumbled, his stone-like features arranged in what might have been a smile. Us high types need to stick together. Thanks, said, grateful for the friendly gesture. I'm a little nervous about working with a squad. Understandable, Thane nodded as they walked toward the training bay. My first integration exercise on Bastion Prime ended with 3 team members in medical treatment. Apparently, my idea of a gentle tap on the shoulder was their idea of a major impact injury. How did you learn to control it? Practice and patience, Thane said. Also accepting that I would never move or act quite the same as the others. Instead of trying to be what they were, I learned to be the best version of what I was. Turns out there's value in being the squad member who can literally move mountains when needed. They arrived at Tactical Training Bay 7 to find Squad Talon already assembled. His new teammates were an interesting mix. 447 a named Skitterclick whose exoskeleton bore intricate tactical markings, a small K engineer called Fizz, and a tall, elegant being with flowing movements identified as Sira from the aerial world of. Standing before them was their instructor, Lieutenant Commander, a veteran whose species didn't recognize. Her skin was dark green with geometric patterns, and her eyes held the kind of intensity that came from actual combat experience. Squad Talon, she began without preamble, you've been assigned as an integration unit. Your mission over the next several weeks will be to learn to function as a cohesive team despite significant physiological and psychological differences. Her gaze moved too. Cadet brings unique capabilities to this unit. He also brings unique challenges. Your job is to learn how to incorporate those capabilities while managing the associated risks. Felt heat rising in his cheeks, but Lieutenant Commander continued before he could respond. Every species in this squad has advantages and limitations. This crystalline structure provides natural electromagnetic shielding, but makes them vulnerable to sonic attacks. This exoskeleton offers protection and enhanced strength, but limits flexibility. The K's small size allows access to restricted spaces, but reduces carrying capacity. This aerial adaptation provides superior spatial awareness, but requires specific atmospheric conditions. She turned to face directly. The human's evolution provides extraordinary physical capabilities, but requires careful integration to prevent accidental harm to teammates. Your job, all of you, is to learn how to make these differences into strengths rather than problems. The first exercise was simple in concept. Navigate an obstacle course as a team, with each member contributing their natural abilities to overcome different challenges. The course was laid out in a large chamber with variable gravity zones, atmospheric composition changes, and both physical and mental challenges. Remember, Lieutenant Commander called as they approached the starting line, this is not a speed trial. This is a cooperation assessment. You succeed together or you fail together. The course began with a low-gravity jumping puzzle that should have been impossible for most ground-based species. Sira took the lead here, her physiology allowing her to navigate the floating platforms with graceful ease. She secured guide lines that the others could use to follow. Next came a maze designed for small spaces, clearly intended for beings like Fizz. The tiny K engineer disappeared into passages that would have been impossible for the larger squad members, emerging minutes later to activate systems that opened alternative routes for the team. The third obstacle was a pattern recognition challenge that required this crystalline computational abilities. 447's form pulsed with soft light as it processed complex mathematical sequences, unlocking the next section of the course. Then they reached the strength challenge, a series of massive barriers that needed to be moved or destroyed to proceed. This is where I usually shine, Skitterclick said, flexing his powerful arms. Studied the obstacles and immediately saw the problem. These barriers were designed to challenge even high-strength species like the. But with his gravitational restraints and the need to be gentle with his teammates, he wasn't sure how to proceed. What do you think? Lieutenant Commander called from the observation area. How does your squad tackle this challenge? Looked at his teammates, each waiting to see what the human would do. He could probably tear through the barriers easily, even with the inhibitors active. But that wouldn't teach them how to work together. Skitterclick, he said finally, you take point on the barriers. You know your own strength limits. For 47, can you analyze the structural weak points? Sira will need someone with good spatial awareness to guide the precision work. Fizz, can you handle any technical systems we uncover? The mandibles clicked in surprise. What about you? These barriers are designed for strength challenges. I'll provide support where you need it, said. Guide you on leverage points, help stabilize things while you work. This isn't about what I can do alone, it's about what we can do together. For the next 30 minutes, Squad Talon worked methodically through the strength challenges. Found himself in an unfamiliar role, the team member who provided careful assistance rather than overwhelming force. When Skitterclick needed help with a particularly stubborn barrier, provided precisely applied pressure at key structural points. When Sira needed someone to anchor a guide rope while she scouted ahead, served as an unshakable anchor point. By the time they completed the course, something had changed in the squad's dynamics. They were beginning to move with coordination rather than simply following each other through challenges. Acceptable performance, Lieutenant Commander announced as they gathered at the finish line. Time, 47 minutes. Standard passing time for integration squads is 60 minutes. More importantly, all team members demonstrated collaborative rather than competitive behavior. Felt a surge of relief and pride. They had done it. He had managed to contribute without overwhelming his teammates or accidentally injuring anyone. However, the instructor continued, this was a basic integration exercise. Tomorrow we begin tactical combat simulations. Cadet, the medical staff will be monitoring your stress responses closely during combat scenarios. Your species' evolutionary adaptations are pronounced when faced with perceived threats. As Squad Talon dispersed to their respective quarters, 447 approached. Thank you for letting us lead our specialties, the chimed. I was concerned you might simply solve every challenge through brute force. That wouldn't teach us anything, replied. Besides, you guys are really good at what you do, I'm just learning how to fit in. Perhaps, 447's crystalline form flickered thoughtfully. We're all learning how to fit in together. Walking back to his quarters, reflected on the day's progress. The integration training had gone better than expected, but he knew the real challenges lay ahead. Combat simulations would test not just his ability to work with others, but his ability to control his own responses when his instincts took over. On Earth, those instincts had kept his species alive through ice ages, predator attacks, and natural disasters. Here at the Academy, they might make him too dangerous to serve alongside the galaxy's other civilized species. Activated his quarters' gravity controls, finally allowing his body to relax into Earth-normal conditions. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new challenges, and new opportunities to prove that a human could be more than just a dangerous survivor. Tomorrow he would begin learning to be a protector instead of just a predator. Lone cadet, apex beasts step aside. The combat simulation bay hummed with energy as Squad Talon prepared for their first tactical engagement exercise. Unlike the previous day's obstacle course, this chamber was designed to replicate actual battlefield conditions with holographic enemies, environmental hazards, and real-time threat assessment. Stood with his teammates, checking his training equipment for the third time. The standard academy gear had been modified for his use, reinforced materials, additional safety protocols, and monitoring systems that would track his vital signs throughout the exercise. Most importantly, his gravitational inhibitors had been upgraded with emergency limiters that would prevent him from accidentally harming if his reflexes took over. Remember, Lieutenant Commander addressed the assembled squads, these simulations are based on actual combat encounters from recent galactic conflicts. The enemy AI has been programmed with tactical information from Void Wraith assault patterns, Hive swarm coordination protocols, and Crimson Fleet boarding actions. Felt a familiar tightness in his chest. The names meant nothing to him yet, but the tone in the instructor's voice suggested these were serious threats that had cost real lives. Squad Talon, you'll be defending Research Station Gamma-7 against a simulated Void Wraith infiltration. Your objective is to prevent enemy forces from reaching the station's core systems while minimizing casualties among civilian personnel. The simulation bay transformed around them, holographic walls and corridors materializing to create a perfect replica of a research station. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red, and the distant sound of alarms added urgency to the scenario. Incoming transmission, the simulation announced in a panicked voice. Unknown contacts detected approaching the station, multiple hull breaches reported. Civilians are evacuating to secure areas, but several research teams are trapped in the outer sections. Sierra immediately took to the air, her physiology allowing her to scout the station's layout from above. I see movement in Sections C and D, she called down. 3 groups of civilians trapped and what looks like infiltration points in the outer hull. Skitterclick's exoskeleton clicked as he analyzed the tactical situation. Standard protocol would be to seal the breaches and establish defensive perimeters around the core systems. But that would mean abandoning the civilian teams, Fizz pointed out, the small K's voice tight with concern. Studied the station layout, his mind automatically calculating distances, angles of approach, and potential choke points. Without realizing it, he was applying thought patterns that had evolved from millions of years of his species hunting and being hunted. We split into two teams, he said suddenly. Rescue and defense. Sierra and Fizz can reach the trapped civilians fastest, Sierra for mobility, Fizz for access to restricted areas. Skitterclick 447 and I hold the core systems. That leaves the infiltrators free to advance while we're divided, 447 chimed, its crystalline form flickering with concern. Felt something shift in his thinking, a predatory focus that seemed to evaluate the station not as a structure to defend, but as terrain to control. Not if we turn their infiltration against them. The station's layout forces them into predictable approach routes. We don't defend the core, we hunt them in the corridors. The squad exchanged glances. His tone had changed, become more focused and somehow more dangerous. Simulation begins in 30 seconds, the system announced. We go with Splan, Sierra said quickly. But remember, these are training simulations. We're here to learn tactics, not to demonstrate our species' hunting abilities. Nodded, but as the simulation began, something primal awakened in his mind. The first Void Wraith appeared as a shadowy form that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. According to the Academy database, they were energy-based entities that could phase through most solid matter and preferred to attack isolated targets. For most galactic species, Void Wraiths were terrifying opponents, nearly impossible to predict, capable of striking from any direction and immune to most conventional weapons. For they were just another predator. His enhanced senses, even dulled by the Academy's artificial environment, picked up subtle changes in air pressure and electromagnetic fields that marked the entity's movements. The gravitational inhibitors made him feel sluggish, but his reaction time remained superhuman. The first Wraith materialized behind 447, its dark form reaching toward this crystalline structure. Moved without conscious thought, intercepting the attack with precision that surprised even himself. His reinforced training baton struck the holographic entity exactly where its energy matrix was most vulnerable. Behind you, left corridor, he called to Skitterclick, somehow sensing the approach of another enemy before any visible signs appeared. The warrior spun and fired, his energy weapon dispersing a second Wraith just as it emerged from the wall. How did you know? Skitterclick asked, his mandibles clicking with amazement. Paused, realizing he didn't have a good answer. I could feel it, the way the air moved, the electromagnetic disturbance. It's like tracking any other predator. 447's form pulsed with rapid calculations. Cadet, according to my analysis, you're detecting enemy movement patterns approximately 2.3 seconds before they become visible to standard sensory arrays. The simulation continued and found himself slipping deeper into what could only be described as a hunting trance. His movements became economical and precise, conserving energy while maximizing effectiveness. He began to anticipate the enemy's tactics, not through academic study of their patterns, but through an instinctive understanding of predator behavior. Station core secured, Skitterclick reported. No enemy contacts have penetrated the inner perimeter. Civilian rescue complete, Sierra's voice came through the communication system. All research teams safely evacuated to secure areas. Simulation complete, the system announced. All objectives achieved. 0 casualties, minimal station damage. Elapsed time, 14 minutes, 37 seconds. As the holographic environment dissolved around them, Squad Talon found themselves standing in the center of the training bay, surrounded by impressed instructors and monitoring equipment. Lieutenant Commander approached with a data pad in her hands, her expression unreadable. Cadet, Doctor needs to speak with you immediately. Felt his stomach drop. Did I do something wrong? On the contrary, Commander said, joining the group. You performed exceptionally well, perhaps too well. Doctor materialized at side with her ever-present medical scanner, its readings causing her luminous blue eyes to widen. During the simulation, your stress hormones barely elevated, she said, studying her instruments. Your heart rate remained at rest levels. Your neural activity showed patterns I've never seen before, extremely focused, but also completely calm. Is that bad? It's impossible, she replied. According to every psychological model we have, beings under combat stress should show significant physiological responses. Fear, aggression, excitement, something. You showed nothing except enhanced performance. Sierra landed nearby, folding her wings with nervous energy. It was like watching a different person, she said quietly. You moved like you knew exactly what was going to happen before it did. Lieutenant Commander looked up from her data pad. The simulation's AI rated your tactical performance as beyond parameters. You achieved a perfect score on a scenario designed to challenge fourth-year cadets. Felt heat rising in his cheeks. I was just doing what felt natural. That's what concerns me, Doctor said gently. For most species, combat is stressful and unnatural. It requires training and conditioning to perform effectively under threat. For you, it appears to be instinctive. Commander stepped forward, his metallic carapace gleaming under the bay's lights. Cadet, we need to discuss your training progression. Your current level of tactical capability suggests you might be better suited for advanced coursework. But I want to stay with Squad Talon, said quickly. We're just starting to work well together. 447's crystalline form chimed softly. We would prefer to continue training together as well. Cadet's abilities complement our own in unexpected ways. Skitterclick clicked his agreement. His tactical insights during the simulation were valuable, and he showed remarkable restraint. He could have eliminated the threats much more aggressively, but chose approaches that minimized risk to the team. Doctor continued her scans, frowning at the readouts. There's something else. During the simulation, your gravitational inhibitors registered several instances where they prevented force applications that would have exceeded safety parameters. What does that mean? It means your body was automatically responding with lethal force levels, but the restraints prevented you from actually applying them. You were holding back instinctively, but your combat reflexes were still trying to respond at intensity. The training bay fell quiet as the implications sank in. Realized that everyone was looking at him with a mixture of awe and concern. He was a weapon that didn't realize its own power, restrained only by artificial limitations and conscious effort. I think, Lieutenant Commander said finally, we need to modify your training protocol. Squad Talon will continue integration exercises, but Cadet will also participate in specialized combat courses designed for high-capability species. What kind of specialized courses? Asked. Commander exchanged a look with Doctor before responding. Elite tactical training, small unit command, advanced threat assessment, the kind of coursework usually reserved for beings with significant military experience. But I'm just a first-year cadet. Cadet, Commander's tone became more formal. Your performance today suggests you possess natural tactical abilities that typically take years to develop. We would be doing you, and the galaxy, a disservice by holding you to standard progression timelines. Fizz, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. What about us? Squad Talon worked well together today. If advances to elite training, what happens to our integration exercises? Squad Talon will continue as a unit, Lieutenant Commander assured them. But Cadet will participate in additional training modules. Think of it as specialized education rather than separation. As they left the simulation bay, found himself walking with his, all of them processing what had happened during the exercise. Can I ask you something? Sira said as they walked. During the simulation, when you were tracking the void wraiths, what did it feel like? Considered the question carefully. Familiar, I guess, like something I'd done before, even though I know I haven't. It reminded me of hunting back home, except... Except what? Skitterclick prompted. Except on Earth, the things we hunt can't phase through walls or manipulate energy fields. They're just fast and dangerous and smart. These void wraiths were like that, but with extra complications. 447's form flickered with rapid calculations. You adapted to energy-based entities using tactics developed for biological predators. That suggests remarkable cognitive flexibility. Or, said quietly, it suggests that predator behavior is universal, regardless of what form it takes. They had reached the corridor junction where they would separate to their respective quarters. Before they parted, Fizz looked up with large, dark eyes. Tomorrow we start the specialized training, the small engineer said. Do you think it will change you, make you different from us? Looked at each of his beings from worlds so different from Earth that they might as well have been from different universes. But over the past few days, they had begun to feel like something he'd never had before. A team. People who relied on him and who he could rely on in return. I hope not, he said honestly. You guys are the first friends I've made since leaving Earth. I don't want to lose that. You won't, Sira said firmly. We're Squad Talon. We stick together regardless of what individual training we receive. As they dispersed to their quarters, made his way through the Academy's corridors, noting how other cadets reacted to his presence. Word of the simulation results was clearly spreading. Some beings stared with obvious curiosity, others with what looked like respect, and a few with expressions that might have been fear. In his reinforced quarters, activated the Earth-normal gravity and finally allowed his body to relax. The day had been exhausting in ways he hadn't expected. Not physically, the simulation had barely challenged him, but emotionally and mentally. He was beginning to understand that his presence at the Academy was about more than just personal achievement. He was representing his entire species, demonstrating what humans were capable of to a galaxy that had previously known them only through reports and statistics. The responsibility was overwhelming. His door chimed, and opened it to find Thane standing in the corridor. "Heard about your simulation results," the massive being rumbled. "Thought you might want to talk to someone who understands the pressure." "What pressure?" Thane entered the quarters, his stone-like features arranged in what might have been sympathy. "The pressure of being the exception, of performing so far above average that everyone starts wondering if you're more weapon than person." Gestured for Thane to sit, noting how the reinforced furniture easily supported the massive being's weight. "Is that what happened to you?" "First month at the Academy," Thane nodded. "I accidentally put 3 training partners in medical treatment during routine exercises. Not because I was trying to hurt them, but because my idea of normal physical interaction was their idea of serious injury." "How did you deal with it?" "I learned to think of my strength as a tool rather than a weapon. Something to be used precisely and carefully, not displayed or unleashed. It took time, but eventually my classmates stopped seeing me as a threat and started seeing me as a protector." Leaned back in his chair, feeling some of the day's tension begin to ease. "I'm worried that the advanced training will make integration with Squad Talon harder. They're good people, and we work well together. I don't want to become someone they can't relate to." "Then don't," Thane said simply. "The training will make you more capable, not more human. You'll learn new skills and tactics, but the person using those skills remains the same. Your choice is whether to be a weapon that happens to think, or a thinking being who happens to be capable of defending others." They talked for another hour, comparing experiences and discussing the unique challenges faced by high-gravity species in a galaxy designed for more fragile beings. When Thane finally left, felt more prepared for whatever tomorrow's advanced training might bring. As he prepared for sleep, reflected on the day's events. The simulation had revealed capabilities he hadn't known he possessed, tactical instincts that seemed to come from nowhere. But it had also shown him something else, the value of fighting for others rather than just surviving for himself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new training. He would learn advanced tactics, study elite combat protocols, and probably discover even more about what his evolution had given him. But tonight, he would remember the moment when Squad Talon worked together perfectly, each member contributing their unique abilities to achieve something none could have accomplished alone. The lone human at the Galactic Military Academy fell asleep thinking not about apex predators or survival, but about 5 very different beings who had become something he'd never had before, a team worth protecting. Outside his reinforced window, Station continued its endless rotation, carrying hundreds of cadets from across the galaxy toward an uncertain future. Each would face their own challenges and discover their own capabilities. But only one would spend the next day learning just how dangerous a thinking predator could become when properly trained.